KNUS Denver. Sleep deprived and heavily caffeinated.
All right, let's do this then.
This is the Jeff and Bill Show.
I don't agree with that.
They don't always agree, but hey, at least they have coffee.
Coffee.
And each other.
I love you, man.
God help us.
I want to bless him. We need all the help we can get.
Now here's Jeff Hunt and Bill Thorpe. The Jeff
7
and
a.m.
Bill
in the
Show
Mile High City
on
on
News Talk
Monday,
710
September 8th,
KNUS.
2025. Good morning, Denver, Colorado. You've tuned in to the Jeff and Bill Show. News Talk 710 KNUS. I'm your co-host, Jeff Hunt, along with Bill Thorpe, bringing you the freshest news and hottest takes from the right, left, and center. Be sure to follow me on X at Jeff Hunt for the more unfiltered takes. Whether you're sipping coffee in Arvada, commuting through Lakewood, or starting your day in Thornton, we're here to ignite debate on the issues that matter to the Denver metro area and all of Colorado. Let's dive into today's gut-wrenching story, the tragic killing of Irina Zarutska, a 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee stabbed to death on a Charlotte light rail. If you saw the videos, terrible. Irina had fled war-torn Ukraine for a better life in America, only to be murdered by a career criminal with a rap sheet dating back to 2011. DeCarlos Brown Jr., a homeless man with a history of robbery, larceny, and misuse of 911, allegedly stabbed Irina 3 times in the neck in an unprovoked attack on August 22nd, 2025. Guys, this is what happens when soft on crime policies let repeat offenders roam free. Colorado has a troubling history of weak DAs and judges releasing dangerous criminals due to psychiatric issues or immigration status, putting innocent lives at risk. Take Solomon Galligan, registered sex offender in Aurora, who attempted to kidnap a kid at a playground in April of 2024. Charges were dropped in April of 2025 after he was found incompetent, marking the 5th time his cases were dismissed on mental health grounds. We brought this up. Billy and I had brought this up back in April when Channel 7 here in Denver started to expose this law that we have here in Colorado that if a judge deems you mentally incompetent and there's not enough beds to hold you, guess what happens to you? You get released. And in some cases, some of these guys have committed vehicular manslaughter, homicide. And because of the head injuries they sustained in the accident they caused that killed somebody, they got released because of this law. Or consider Tren de Aragua gang members who have been arrested and released in Aurora. In Colorado, we're no strangers to rising crime. We got the violent crime rate here in Colorado, in Denver. Plus, think about Amy Padden, 18th Judicial District DA, who sparked outrage over plea deals like the one in Caitlin Weaver's case, where an unlicensed, undocumented teen driver who killed a 16-year-old girl got probation. Remember that? And then, of course, Trump's ICE department swept in and got him out here. But the woke crowd's push for leniency is costing lives, and repeat offenders released time and time again, despite clear red flags, are getting pushed back out onto the street, and innocent people are dying. It's time to turn this around. We're going to talk about this hour. Want to hear from you. Give us a call, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Capitalist Law text line, 720-819-5115. Now it's time for News and Comment with Blake Olson.
Blake Olson.
Blake Olson, News and Comment.
Good morning. Happy Monday. 63 and sunny in Denver, expecting a high of 87 today. This portion of the news sponsored by Pastor Camp Heating and Air Conditioning at 303-777-1234 to learn more about special savings opportunities on Lennox equipment. Our top story, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says he thinks the Supreme Court will declare DJT's global tariffs legal. But if it doesn't, he told NBC that the Treasury could have to hand out massive refunds. A paddleboarder is presumed dead after they were reported missing in Horsetooth Reservoir, just west of Fort Collins, of course. The paddleboarder was not wearing a life jacket. After thorough search efforts, the incident is now in recovery mission. Satanka Cove and its surrounding areas will remain closed until further notice. South Korea's foreign minister will be in the U.S. today to help bring home some 300 Korean workers arrested last week working illegally at a Georgia Hyundai plant. The plan so far is to fly the workers mostly employed by subcontractors home on chartered flights. DJT doubling down on his vow to clean up Chicago. His comments follow weekend protests against his repeated threats to send federal troops, including a social media post warning Chicago is about to find out why it's called the Department of War. There were, I think, 18 shootings in the teens over the weekend. I think 5 people died in Chicago. Here's DJT.
We could solve Chicago very quickly, but we're going to make a decision as to where we go over the next day or two. When you look at what happened to D.C. in a short period of time, honestly, it's amazing. Over a period of 12 days, in other words, on the 12th day, we had the crime just about solved. And right now, people are walking out. They're going out right now to restaurants all over D.C., whereas if you go back a year ago or 6 months ago, nobody was going out. Nobody. We did it in 12 days. Now it's better than it was in 12 days. We'll make it even better, and then we're also going to clean it up. We're going to clean up the city. We're going to make some great improvements to the roads, to the medians, you know.
Yeah, that's great stuff. Trump also said he's considering deploying troops to New Orleans, as we've talked about before, while Homeland Security confirms federal immigration raids are already underway in Boston. A boy has died after a house party shooting in Denver. The shooting in the 1100 block of North Syracuse Street was reported on social media early Saturday morning. Investigators say the boy was shot in a parking lot outside the party and died after he was taken to the hospital. No arrests have been announced. Police investigating a hit-and-run death in Denver's Lincoln Park neighborhood. Officers were called to the area of West 14th Ave and Lipan early Saturday morning. The initial report said there was a shooting, but investigators discovered that the person killed was hit by a vehicle. No information about the suspect vehicle has been announced. Hey, it doesn't matter how you do it. Once again, 1:47 to go in the game on Sunday. Titans at the Broncos at Mile High.
Here comes the blitz. Cam Ward hit as he throws. That ball is loose. They're going to let it play through. It's Denver football no matter what. And the Broncos defense comes up yet again to help win the game in week 1.
They were outstanding. Can you imagine that if it was a flag football game? Oh, and he pulls the flag. People love sacks. They love tackles. They love hard hits. Doesn't matter. Once again, if it was pretty or not, the Broncos are 1-0, and they kicked off the season with the victory. Bo Nix, 25 of 40, 176 yards, 1 touchdown, 2 interceptions. He did fumble the ball once. R.J. Harvey, the running back, 70 yards. Dobbins, 63 yards. Cortland Sutton looked good, 6 catches and a TD, but the defense was just outstanding.
I think they were 2 of something on third down. I think they had 2 first downs in the second half. So they were outstanding.
Sean Payton, head coach, and the Ravens, they were leading the Bills by 15 halfway through the fourth quarter, and then everything unraveled in Buffalo, and the Bills come back following 2 turnovers. Former Broncos kicker Matt Prater with a winning 32-yarder. He was actually on the practice squad a day before, but he gets the winner. But this is what started it all, really.
Mitchell-Payton, first-year player, I should say, is the man protecting, and Henry lost the football. And the Bills are down there. And they have it.
Derrick Henry was just dominating that game, and they end up losing it 41-40. Buffalo now 1-0 to start the season. Aaron Rodgers, he looked impressive with his new team, Pittsburgh. The Steelers beat the Jets, and Micah Parsons, after the trade from Dallas to the Packers over the Lions. Lions, as Mark Crowley said to me or texted, they did not look prepared at all. Boy, he's right there. All right, 60 in Boulder, 61 in Littleton, 63 in Denver. Jeff and Billy continue on this Monday morning. Blake Olson, News Talk 710 KNUS.
The Denver forecast on this early Monday, just a few passing clouds this morning, temperatures in the mid-50s by daybreak. Then for the rest of your Monday, mostly sunny and summery, highs around 85, lows down to 60 tonight. Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, lots of sunshine and dry with highs in the upper 80s. Weather brought to you by L&L Heating and Air Conditioning. For quick, trustworthy, and dependable service, call L&L Heating and Air Conditioning at 720-851-1691. Visit them online at bestdenverhvac.com. That's bestdenverhvac.com. You'll be comfortable with L&L. I'm day weather meteorologist Patrice Sutter in the 710 KNUS Weather Center.
I don't know if you saw this video that was released of
the Denver forecast on this early
Irina Zarutska. She's a 23-year-old Ukrainian refugee that was stabbed to death on a Charlotte light rail. She had fled war-torn Ukraine for a better life in America. She was learning English, and she is coming in after her job. She had just finished working. She gets on this light rail, and she sits down in front of this homeless man. And this homeless man is behind her with his head up against the glass. And Irina has earbuds in. This is something that, we had a conversation with my kids about this video, and they watched it because part of the life lesson here is you need to be very aware of your surroundings. There's no blame put upon Irina for this whatsoever, but my kids do this too. They just put in their headphones and just kind of check out, right, whatever is on their phone. And you need to be aware of what's going on around you. Well, she's got both headphones in. She sits down. She's scrolling on her phone. And this guy, DeCarlos Brown Jr., homeless man, riding the light rail in Charlotte, did not pay, by the way, for his ticket. He was on there illegally already without paying for the ticket. Pulls out a pocket knife, and the only video I know that's been released pauses when he's about to stab her. I don't think the actual stabbing's been released, but he allegedly stabs her 3 times with a pocket knife right in the neck. Kills her there on the train, then gets up and walks out, and the video starts again, and you see the blood just dripping down. According to reports, there were no security on that train, that this was completely unprovoked. There was no connection between her and him whatsoever, that this man, DeCarlos Brown Jr., struggles with schizophrenia and mental health issues, has a history of robbery, larceny, misuse of 911, and even assault. And he had been released a number of times by these kind of progressive DAs and judges, in part because of the same thing we deal with here in Colorado, that we have a law that if there's not enough beds in the psychiatric ward, even if you've committed a violent crime or attempted kidnapping, like in the case of Solomon Galligan here in Colorado, you get released back out into the public. And this is heartbreaking. There's so many angles to this. One is the lack of media attention. That outside of conservative media, you're not seeing mainstream media cover this thing at all. And is that because it doesn't fit the narrative? If this was a white man that killed a black woman, for instance, it would be all over the media. Think Daniel Penny, who killed a black man on the train, right? All over, hundreds of media coverage immediately. But in this case, the big names, ABC, CBS, NBC, Associated Press, New York Times, haven't covered this thing at all. It's really only been relegated to conservative media. So is there an agenda? Is this exposing the mainstream media for the agenda that they constantly want to push about a racialized nation and all the problems that are out there regarding that? Here you have a guy that had been let out multiple times that shouldn't have been on that train, that America, our society, failed this young woman. She fled a war-torn country, was looking for something better, and was murdered in cold blood in this country. And that guy should have never been there. Did we fail Irina in this country? Lots to talk about. Bill, I'm assuming you probably saw the video on this.
Yeah, saw the video.
Terrible.
Oh, it's awful. And unsurprisingly, I don't agree with your idea that the liberal sphere is necessarily ignoring it. I've seen it make the rounds on numerous outlets that you would consider both mainstream left and also right. I saw it all over the place. I don't think it's necessarily concentrated in one place or the other, but how it was reported was interesting as far as to look at how headlines were written one way or another. Yeah, it's absolutely tragic. The issue being, do we have a solution for this? Because I would say that this guy's not going to get any better if we just put him necessarily in prison. I don't think that he is going to. So if that's true, that he won't get better or get the help that he needs inside of a prison scenario, then does that mean we are just assuming we are going to incarcerate him for the rest of his life? And isn't that some of the arguments about we shouldn't have life in prison versus the death penalty because of all the money we spend keeping these people alive for the rest of their life? So if I just submit that I don't think prison is the place in which after he emerges from prison, he's going to be in a better mental health state then than he would be now. That's what I'm getting at. I'm not saying that prison may not be appropriate. I'm just saying if we expect him to not be as mentally ill at the end of that, I disagree that's the choice, and that will get us to the goal that we want. If we want to look at the idea of starting to institutionalize people, then we got to talk about it. Talk about what that institutionalization looks like. Again, and what is the spend? Where does that go? What are the processes and procedures? I agree that we do not have enough beds for people in mental health crises in Colorado. We see that all the time down in Pueblo. They all the time tell us that they are full. Now, I think that in most situations, and this is where I believe the government gets things wrong based on not understanding business and supply and demand, there seems to be a demand, whatever that is, for additional beds for people that are suffering from mental illness. There seems to be, because the one state facility we have seems to be full all the time. So it would, by logic, we have more of a demand or more of a supply of the people that need the help. Either way, there is a reason to have more of a facility. Now, The problem I have is, what is that process and procedure? If we talk about the idea of what I hear is all the time, we have a mental health crisis. And then nothing, just like that. I don't hear anybody come up with any plans, processes, procedures, or even ideation about how to deal with it. Think about recently when we had the school shooting in Minnesota. We heard a lot about mental health, and the people's plans and processes for that were nothing. I'm afraid that we use mental health in some cases like this as a catch-all so that we as a society don't have to do anything about it. I believe that we feel by acknowledging it, we then are allowed to move on and ignore it and the impacts and everything else in the society. That's my feeling.
I see it a bit differently. I think we have DAs and you have judges, and we see this here in the 18th Judicial District, which is Arapahoe County, with Amy Padden, right? And she's facing a recall effort now. And Amy ran on, and you can go to her website, look up, she's actually taking it down now because it's not helping her cause. But in her election website, it was all about community support, social justice, finding ways to end the school to prison pipeline and over incarcerations and all this kind of progressive nonsense that will always fall on the side of the criminal, right? And say, well, we've got to find ways to keep them out of jail. We've got to find ways to put them back into the community. And they're dangerous people who should be locked up. Another example is this law in Colorado that if there aren't enough beds, the judge is required to release them, not find a way to put them in jail. And as we've heard from other DAs on this show, that if that DA is particularly motivated to find a way around this law, they can't. But with Amy Padden and others, it's release them into the community for community support. In North Carolina, you had a guy that should have never been on that train to begin with, right? He would skip the fare. He had a long criminal history. His family knew he had mental health issues. And what did we do to him? We just let him out to roam around in the community, right? Same thing with this kind of drug overdose, drug use, poverty thing, that we're going to do community care, community support, which is just another word for, well, we're not really going to deal with the person. We're just going to release them out there. That is what has happened in these progressive communities. And the result is innocent people are dying. So, what needs to be done? We need to bring back insane asylums. We just do. Sorry. I know there was abuse that took place. There's abuse taking place right now on the street. And we just turn a blind eye because it's community care. So, bring back the insane asylums, repeal the laws that mandate judges, like here in Colorado, that if there's not beds, we're just going to release them into the community. I'm sorry, but in some cases, like with Solomon Galligan, where you're a registered sex offender and you'd been tried to kidnap people before and you just tried to kidnap a kid again, no, you're going to go sit in jail. I'm sorry if it's not compassionate for mental health reasons to lock somebody away. You're a danger to our society. You're going to go away. That needs to happen. Third, we as the electorate need to get rid of these weak-kneed DAs and judges like Amy Padden here in the 18th that are always going to side with criminals first. Their compassion is always with the criminal first and their experience. And let's understand why they're stabbing people randomly on light rails. And maybe they just needed to be hugged more as a kid. That needs to end. You need to put tough on crime leaders into positions of leadership so that our communities are safer. It must always be the safety of innocent people first, not the experience and background and history of criminals, which is what Amy Padden, weak-kneed DAs are doing. All right, join the conversation. Give us a call, 303-696-1971. Is the murder of someone like Irina Zarutska, the 23-year-old stabbed on the light rail in North Carolina, going to be a change moment for this country? Are we going to start to root out these DAs and these judges that have allowed dangerous people out into our communities, and we're going to turn around these laws? Are things in Colorado going to turn around, or are we going to continue to have these crime problems? Give us a call, 303-696-1971. Text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. We'll get to Jack in just a second. Let me tell you about advanced hair restoration. Guys, let's talk about your hair. If you're losing it and desire to have it back, then Advanced Hair Restoration has the easiest guaranteed solution. Their simple one-day treatment offers life-changing results. I've seen it with my own eyes. Guys, it's not magic, but close to it. They put hair where you need it the most, and bam, it grows. It's actually science. Advanced Hair has it all. Top-rated Dr. Tanya Pauls, modern technology, and best of all, you get your own natural hair that begins regrowing the very next day. Advanced Hair even guarantees it will grow for life. So schedule your free consultation now. That's 720-459-HAIR. If you qualify, you'll get $250 off and 250 free hair grafts. Advanced Hair is the winner of Westward's Best of Denver and has changed the lives of tens of thousands of people. So don't wait. Check out the before and afters online for yourself. 720-459-HAIR or advancedhair.com. That's advancedhair.com. We'll continue. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS.
Welcome back to the Jeff and Bill Show. We're talking about the killing of Irina Zarutska. This is the 23-year-old woman born in Kiev, Ukraine, fled the war that's taking place, moved to North Carolina, was killed, stabbed in the neck 3 times. The video's been released. It's terrible. The man charged in her murder is DeCarlos Brown Jr., a homeless man with a history of robbery, larceny, misuse of 911, and charges which include assault. Never should have been out on the street, dealing with severe mental health issues. Shouldn't have been on the train. Was fare jumping at the time he murdered Zarutska. And questions about weak DAs, weak judges, who let him out. We're dealing with similar stuff here in Colorado. And the DA in Arapahoe County, the 18th Judicial District, Amy Patton, when she ran for office, was all talking about compassion towards criminals, reducing, incarceration, overcrowded jails, all that stuff. And you've had similar cases where she's let illegal immigrants that plowed their cars right into young women coming home from work out on probation. Solomon Galligan, a registered sex offender who tried to kidnap a child, had charges dropped because of mental incompetence. So are we dealing with an issue in these progressive cities where weak DAs are putting their own citizens at risk because of this progressive ideology of criminals first and their compassion first? Let's go to the phone lines. Jack, Wyoming. Good morning, Jack. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Morning.
Yeah, good morning. On this topic of how to deal with people that are a menace to society, you talk about incarceration or committing to a mental institution. I think there's a cheaper and better way to deal with it.
Okay, what would that be?
Well, you buy them a club membership and a set of golf clubs.
Okay. And what do they do? Okay.
Yeah, you've obviously
they'll be playing golf. They'll be playing golf, and they'll realize that they're never going to master it, and they'll devote their time to it, and that'll keep them off the streets and off the subways and keep them away from being in a position to menace the general public. I mean, and it would be a lot cheaper.
All right.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thanks.
All right, Jack. I guess,
Okay.
I think he was
one.
making the connection that maybe it becomes one of those hobbies that you just devote all your time to and stuff
Yeah.
like that. But I mean, obviously, if you give them golf clubs, they're not going to play golf with them.
Yeah,
They would
I don't
probably
know.
sell them to get the drugs that they might be addicted to.
My guess is that Solomon Galligan had another hobby. That was, again, to kill kids. Just saying, I'm not sure if that would have.
Trying to kidnap kids.
Yeah, I'm not
Yeah.
sure. It's that he already had one. Yeah, I don't know.
I missed the joke there.
It's okay, but it's Monday, and we could easily be that obtuse. I'm certain this could just be Mondays getting a hold of us.
wake up to
Here's something that I've got in this entire conversation. How do we then determine that someone is mentally ill? How do we go through that process, and how do we make that determination? And the cautionary tale I have is, are we going to let, and I'm using it in air quotes, the state determine? And if not the state, then who? How do we make this determination that someone is mentally ill to a point that they should be placed into an institution or even behind bars? How do we make this determination? Jeff, how would we go about this? If we talk about the idea of we need to reopen things like mental institutions and we need to increase the mental health that is available, mental health help that is available for citizens, some of that will be non-voluntary.
Yeah.
How do we make that determination?
And look, I understand the constitutional concerns. That's a valid concern in all this, right? Obviously, there's a process by which somebody is already determined to be mentally incompetent. Typically, there's a crime connected to it, right? So you've committed some form of crime, robbery, larceny, assault, and the state is trying to determine where to put you, whether or not to be incarcerated or if there's a mental health issue. So there's an evaluation that takes place, and it's typically connected to a crime. But what you have right now around both drug use, homelessness, and crime is a willingness to allow the community to care for them. And when I say community care, you see it when they're allowing people to live drug addicted in the streets in tents, because obviously no one is providing any type of care for them. We've just released them under this umbrella of community care, and then the result is your 16-year-old daughter that's driving home from work gets T-boned by an illegal immigrant and dies out there in the middle of the street. Or your 23-year-old daughter is riding home on a light rail and gets stabbed in the neck. So this community care effort that's been pushed out there by these progressive DAs and judges is resulting in innocent people dying. Few things need to be addressed here. One, the law that allows them to be released simply because there's not enough beds. It may not sound nice and compassionate, but I'm sorry, you're going to need to go to prison. The safety of innocent people is more important. Number two, we as the electorate got to stop electing these DAs. If they put stuff out there like reducing overcrowding or compassionate justice or social justice, those are all red flags for, they're always going to put the priorities of these criminals ahead of the citizens that they serve. Always will. And it should be a red flag that they should be released. And then third, you got to build more mental institutions. We just got to spend the money to do it, because we're not going to allow these people to continue to live out on the streets, intent and harm our kids, grandkids, innocent people. Wow, we got full phone lines. Let's get to the phone lines. Daniel, Denver, good morning. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning. So what's on your mind? Talk to us about mental health and crime. You said on the phone to the screen that you have some experience, background in mental health. What's your experience working in that field, and how can we apply it to the conversation today? If we go to the guy that's on the subway that eventually stabs a woman in North Carolina, were there any ways to get him help beforehand to where he maybe wouldn't be in that situation? Just what's your experience?
So I actually have experience being a counselor in the mental health care field. I actually worked at a transitional facility where we would help youth try to stabilize and become, productive members of society, but sometimes they age out. And so my concern is how and who classifies, like you're saying, what mental health is, and what do we do when the individual in those transitional periods choose not to get the help anymore? So we already, have a red flag. We know this individual was to some degree institutionalized. And now because of the red tape in the system, we're kind of just like, well, they're an adult now and they don't want help. This situation could happen to this individual in Charlottesville. And so again, like, who classifies, and then what do we do with those individuals? Do we just wait for them to commit a crime and then we send them to, like you're saying, an institution or prison? Colorado, it sounds like we don't have the strongest laws to hold individuals who need support, but have also been, potentially repeat offenders. And so that's where my concern is, like, that transitional phase. We know we could have helped them, but money or whatever the situation might be, we choose not to.
And Daniel, here's my question. Do you think we as a society have erred on the side of that person's freedom versus society's safety? So the way the system's set up now, we're going to make sure that that person who's an adult does something really bad before we put them away, and therefore have kind of erred on the side of their freedoms versus our rights to be safe in our own communities.
Well, I think it's tantamount that we do give everybody the chance to, I don't want to say make the mistake, but be a free individual. We can't preemptively, arrest somebody or place them in an institution So that's a slippery slope to walk on, to choose safety over freedom. I mean, it's, of course, we don't want anything bad to happen. Bad things happen all the time. You can get in your car and you can get in a car crash. Do we take away the vehicles of everybody for safety and go all autonomous, or force everybody to be on public transportation? So we can't just say, take away their freedom because they potentially could be a risk. It's a hard question to answer when you frame it that way.
Yeah, and especially if we go off the idea of, quote, for the safety of society, end quote. Mm-hmm. If we use that as a justification, I believe both political parties can have a whole lot of things they'll want to restrict or keep us from doing for the, quote, safety of our society.
Exactly.
Daniel, appreciate the call. Thanks so much. Daniel's line from Denver will be open, 303-696-1971. Let's go to Frank in Denver. Good morning, Frank. You're on with Jeff and Bill.
Morning.
I always enjoy an intelligent guy like Jack calling in with a solution. This time his solution was both inaccurate and humorous at the same time. But it's no more inaccurate or humorous than the current solution our politicians have come up with for cases like this. This particular sad fellow, if he's a victim of schizophrenia, it's a hard thing to treat. The psychiatrists have criteria for diagnosing schizophrenia, and they have meds that are to some degree effective for these people if they will take their meds. But there's a category of schizophrenics that don't like to take meds by mouth, and their only solution is to get monthly injections, which keep them in better control. But it's a sad thing because you are going to be faced with taking away somebody's freedoms if they are potentially violent out in the public. Otherwise, you have an innocent victim like this poor girl from Ukraine who faces the choice of either being killed by a crazy man in Russia or a crazy man on the streets of Charlottesville. So, it's a dilemma, but I think you do the best you can. Look at all the heat Trump is taking now for trying to do an obvious thing of cleaning up the streets of Washington, Chicago, Baltimore, all these different places. I mean, there's got to be some common sense here in our country, or we're going to continue down this crazy path to socialism, communism, whatever you want to call it. But it's a path to destruction, and it is the destruction of our families, our livelihood, our country, and unfortunately, because America is shining light on a hill supposedly to the world, and it's something that people aspire to, it's not going to be good for the rest of the world.
Now, Frank, I want to ask you this question. Stephen Miller has posted, and other conservatives have said, look, this continues to show in all these cases, whether it's the stabbing that took place in North Carolina, the response of progressives towards illegal immigrants, the response of progressives towards Donald Trump trying to make these cities safer, is that Democrats always put criminals first. In each one of these cases, the Democrats rush to the side of the criminals, that we want to reduce incarceration, that illegal immigrants have due process rights, that we don't want the military in our cities, that in every single one of these cases, the Democrats have revealed themselves to put criminals first ahead of American citizens. Your thoughts?
I think it comes down to, in that particular case and in so many other cases, the contrast between overblown empathy / sympathy versus common sense. And I'm glad I'm not a judge, because I can't imagine some of the things that they have to face in these situations. But for a lot of these things, we have to use our best science and our best knowledge and the best we can do with our laws to help all these people involved. This poor man in Charlottesville obviously needed help. But the question is, how many of those people are out there on the streets, and what's it going to cost for each individual? He's obviously going to be
basically
Frank,
a ward of
I
the
want to
state.
stop you there for a second. Yeah, the cost is incredible, but does Stephen Miller in the quote that Jeff was reading, does that sound like he's worried about that person on the street that might be in a mental health crisis?
Well, he's obviously pushing his political agenda, but he's doing it because he thinks it's what's right. It's just like you. You come in with arguments all the time that are spurious, but, you know,
they're not spurious at all.
Well, I
they're not spurious at all. And here's one of them. Here's one of them, Frank. What do we do from an argument standpoint with Stephen Miller when he's talking about some of the things that are getting in the way or due process and putting military in cities? That's something that people are pushing back on and that he's complaining. That people are upset over taking away due process rights and putting military in cities.
You have to confront him. But and ask him to defend his logic. That's all you can do.
Oh, he's not. He's illogical. But I appreciate that call, Frank. And I've got another one. This is not a spurious argument, but it's one based on this conversation. And this, if we're talking about the idea of mental health, if we're talking about the idea that these people that are in these crises shouldn't be out there and shouldn't be in a situation where maybe they can stab a Ukrainian immigrant there on the subway of North Carolina, then talk to me about red flag laws. Talk to me about who gets to make that determination about when you're in a mental health crisis and whether or not you have access to your legally purchased firearms. That was the argument with red flag laws, is that the state is now going to determine whether or not I am in a mental health crisis and take away some of my rights. Again, that should be a shall not be infringed argument. I hear that all the time. What do I not understand about shall not be infringed? So are we saying that if this guy who was in North Carolina had legally purchased a firearm, should have been able to keep it? That's a question if we're talking about determining who's mentally ill and what they have access to or whether or not they should be institutionalized. Before you start blowing that trumpet, think about red flag laws.
Well, one of the concerns about red flag laws is that your guns can be taken away without any conviction.
But it's a mental health crisis.
There was no actual judicial procedure there. In this case, you have a guy that had been arrested multiple times on lots of different reasons, and was able to kill somebody without a gun, with a knife. So I'm not sure how red flag laws directly apply.
No, the issue is the idea of mental health incapacity. Being mentally ill is not a crime, so you wouldn't be found criminally liable necessarily of being mentally ill. And so you could be institutionalized. This gentleman that had done the stabbing could have been determined to be mentally ill and had been institutionalized beforehand. The question I'm coming to is, who is allowed to determine whether or not you're mentally ill? And if it is the state, then explain to me why the state also couldn't determine you're mentally ill, at least having a crisis, and then execute red flag laws. If the state is the one making the determination, convince me I'm wrong.
Join the conversation, 303-696-1971, or text us on the Dan Caplis Law text line at 720-819-5115. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is Denver's Talk Leader News Talk 710 KNUS. KNUS. Welcome back to Jeff and Bill. We'll get back to the phone calls here in just a second. We had a gentleman on the line that was going to talk to us about the history as far as mental incarceration and mental institutions here in the country. Unfortunately, I had to go. Dropped off. I'm sorry that we missed your phone call. But he was talking about it. It was Gary talking about back in the 30s and the 40s. We did create mental institutions, but then the conditions got to be so bad that was kicked back to the States. Some of what you saw inside of those mental institutions was reflected in things like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah.
And as a friend of the show, Peter Boyles, always reminds us that the term bedlam comes from a mental institution in England where they used to, they had the mental institution, they built a scaffolding that would run on the top part of the building where you could look down into the open yard and you would pay to go watch the crazy people do odd things to each other. You were witnessing bedlam. That's where that comes from. So, yeah. So that's what we used to do, and that's how we used to treat our mentally ill, and that was the problem why we closed them down. So if we do, what Gary was kind of looking at is, do we have any association or any assertions or assumptions that it would be any better? Would it be any better?
Oh, yeah, it would be better because right now you have no way to measure the abuse, right? If two mentally ill people are harming each other on the street, how do you measure that? And I've seen some videos of ministry people that, like, bro, to be a homeless woman.
Oh, it's awful. It's one of the worst things in the world.
Is horrible.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, it is. They're sexually assaulted on a regular basis, and we don't measure it.
No,
we have no idea it's happening, and so this notion of community care, whether it's mental health or drug addiction, I think there's a lot of overlap on that. It's just a way to pass it off, and we're not going to end the lives of people that are mentally ill. We're not going to, kill them to not deal with them. So we have to.
We can, though. I mean, the thing is, since in the past, some of our treatments and some of our interactions with them have led to their deaths. And again, this is not mentally hell as far as incarceration, but I hate to bring it up again, Elijah McClain. Elijah McClain did have some mental issues. And
he died, but that wasn't like it wasn't systemic. We're not. This isn't 1945 Germany where we're ushering people into
the
camps.
idea about what happens and how we treat those. And again, if we're just going to determine through the work of the state that now you're mentally ill, that's the big question I have: is who gets to choose? Who gets to choose? It's no longer the individual seeking mental health; that it is now an outside organization or body.
And I understand that concern, but we already do that. We already do that. There's an analysis, and you walk through a checklist, and people sit down and evaluate you.
Yeah, and usually it's after a crime or something else, and that's the thing.
Right. And I don't think that changes. We're not just going to randomly evaluate everybody and determine if they're crazy. But if you are committing a crime like these guys are, and we continue to let them out, it's going to be the people that pay the price. You're listening to The Jeff and Bill Show.
This is KNUS.